Hi everyone. In today's video, we're going to talk about application control on Sophos and how it can help you protect your Synology NAS. So with everything that we talked about in other videos, so we were focused on network security. And what did we put in place so far to protect our NAS? So on the NAS, we configured the incoming firewall. So we are allowing ourselves to reduce the attack surface by limiting what kind of services the internet can access. And on Sophos, we also configured the incoming firewall also to reduce attack surface. And we implemented some other features like the country control, anti-DDoS, etc. We also configured the outgoing firewall. So when you are going to configure the outgoing firewall, it's more to reduce, for example, to reduce exfiltration attempts and connection to command and control servers or just unwanted services. We also implemented the web proxy service, and this will add an additional layer of protection to reduce exfiltration attempts and connection to command and control servers or just unwanted services. And with the web proxy, it's more of a dynamic protection because every time the reputation filter gets updated, for example, there is a site that is suddenly considered as a malware, your NAS will not be able to communicate with the site because you have blocked this possibility by blocking this category. Now, there are some limitations when we have those kind of technologies. So for example, for the firewall, it is only address and port based. Okay, so you may not have a good understanding or visibility of what kind of services your NAS is accessing. You don't know on which site you are connecting to, and you can't categorize the destination. So you're going to see on the logs of the firewall, you're going to see that your NAS has connected to a certain IP, to a certain service. Okay, but is this a malware site or is this a normal site? It might be more difficult to understand. So of course we can use the web proxy to overcome this limitation because the web proxy is going to intercept HTTP or HTTPS traffic only if it's on the port 80 and 443, and it's going to allow us to give a better visibility of which website you are accessing and on what services and what is the complete URL, for example. So with the web proxy, there are some limitations, okay? Because on the Sophos in transparent mode, only traffic going through port 80 and 443 is going to be intercepted. So traffic on other ports, like for example, port 22, port 2222, for example, it's gonna be unfiltered and uncategorized because it's going to go through the firewall only. The web filter is not going to intercept this traffic. And therefore, you cannot know which application is being used or accessed. And then we can use the application control module to overcome this limitation. So for example, you are trying to connect, or your NAS, for example, connects to a internet site on the port TCP 2222. Okay, so it's not going to go through the web proxy because it's not web traffic. So it's gonna go through the firewall, and if you have allowed this traffic because you have you did not really have strict rules on outgoing traffic for your NAS. So on the logs, you're gonna see this traffic, but you will not be able to understand if this is a desired behavior or if it is not normal. You will not have visibility. So what kind of application this 222 port is. So now if we talk about the high level diagram, so this is fairly simple. As I said before, we have the Sophos UTM, which is in a transparent proxy mode, which has firewall rules also. And for example, you have the NAS connecting to the internet on this TCP 2222 port. But what is this application? What is this service? Maybe something strange is going on and you would like to understand what it is. So the Sophos UTM-9 comes with the application control module. So it is a security module that will allow you to have a better visibility on which application you are using on your network or that your NAS is trying to access, for example. Recognized applications, they will be visible and or logged, depending on the configuration that you will have. Of course, if the application is not recognized, then it will not be logged in the application control module. It will only be logged with the firewall rules. So the application control module allows you to create rules in order to allow or block traffic depending on the application. We're going to see some examples after that. This module should be looking for some network flow characteristics. So for example, which IP or URL is called, what kind of protocol or services is used, and probably it's looking into the three-way handshake and the first, the first packets that are exchanged, probably to detect what kind of application we are talking about. It's not completely clear on what kind of information it is looking for to know, to detect the application involved. But there is also a limitation. On Sophos, it is only source-based. So that means that you are going to create a rule that will apply to a source. You cannot say, for example, from this source to this destination, I'm going to allow or block this application. So it's not really, you cannot have a fine-grained configuration, okay? So it will only check if the source IP is allowed or blocked to access this application. And sometimes it may not always detect or recognize application. So of course, I think there are more than 1,000 applications that Sophos is able to detect, but of course, maybe it will not be able to detect for whatever reason. Maybe it did not understand the traffic, or the application is just not it wasn't able to detect what kind of application we are using. And it does not seem to recognize application for traffic going through the proxy. This is something I have discovered. I thought that in the past, even if my web traffic is going through the proxy on port 80 and 443, it was able to say, okay, this is the Facebook application. But maybe I misread a couple of years ago, and if it's not using the 80 or 443 port, it's going to go through the application control module, and it's going to find what application we're talking about. Now, how can it help to protect your NAS? So first of all, you can specify which application your NAS should be allowed to access. So this is a whitelisting approach. So for example, you are going to allow your NAS to use NTP, to use TeamViewer, to use DNS, to use BitTorrent, for example. And you can block everything else. Or you can do it by specifying which application your NAS should not be allowed to access. So you will, for example, have a rule that blocks some applications, and for all the rest, it is authorized. Now, those are some real use cases. So for example, in terms of an attack, you can help protect your NAS from SSH-based reverse shells. Okay, so for example, let's say that you've got your outgoing firewall on Sophos or some other technology. Your outgoing firewall rule is very large because you don't want to have a fine-grained firewall configuration, or because you have some other applications that needs all those ports, okay? But on the firewall rule, you will say, okay, I'm going to block from my NAS the possibility to use SSH to the internet. So because there is no reason that your NAS creates an SSH connection to the outside. It can be strange. But then your NAS gets compromised, okay? And the hacker is going to make an SSH connection, but using a different port. Let's say the 2222 port. So of course, your firewall is going to allow this traffic because it is in the range that is specified as allowed. And your proxy won't take this traffic into consideration anyway because it's not a web-based traffic. And therefore, for example, exfiltration of data or communication with a command and control server is possible and you will not know about it. So this is the first use case. Now the second use case, for example, you would like to protect your NAS against the use of unauthorized services, for example, BitTorrent. This is just an example. So you've got this following setup. You are using the VPN server package and you don't want user to consume bandwidth. As usual, your NAS has to access to the internet, for example, a lot of ports. So like before. So if you're going to use a BitTorrent client on your computer and it goes through your NAS because you have a VPN server with a full tunneling configuration, or you don't want someone to install a BitTorrent package on your NAS, well, the firewall is going to allow it because BitTorrent, when it uses the peer-to-peer connection, it's going to have high ports. And again, the proxy won't take this traffic into configuration because it's not web-based. And therefore, your NAS will suffer from performance degradation, for example. So this is another use case where this can be useful. Now, how to mitigate, how to correct this state? Okay, so you can use the application control. So if we take the SSH example, we'll create an application control rule that will forbid the use of SSH or BitTorrent from the NAS. So the NAS is not able to communicate to the outside world with the SSH application, not the SSH port, but the SSH application. And this is an example of blacklisting. Okay, so here we have a rule called SSH block. So we will block, we will log, and it's the application SSH for my NAS. Now I have attempted to communicate with the outside world with an SSH server, for example, and here you can see that I've got a red log stating that, well, if it's in red, it's blocked. Okay, so I did not block the port because I have authorized with my firewall this range or this port, but the application control module, I'm going to block the SSH application. So it's blocked, although the port is authorized. And this is my configuration, what you see down. So the first example here, it's just to show you the blacklisting approach. But on my side, I'm using a whitelisting approach. So I'm going to authorize for my NAS some applications. This application will be SMTP, subscene for, I think it was for DS video for subtitles, HTTP, HTTPS, and this kind of traffic. On my on the interface of my WAF, because as you know, I'm using Sophos as a WAF, so Sophos has to communicate with my NAS. And therefore, I'm going to authorize Sophos to communicate with my NAS with HTTPS and SSL. And then all kind of other services or applications are blocked. As you can see here, there is also a notion of productivity and risk that we will see after. So this rule means that everything that is a productivity less or equal to 5 and a risk that is bigger or equal than 1, everything is blocked. So that means that all the applications that Sophos knows about are blocked. So how to activate everything, how to configure? So you just have to go into the web protection, application control, and in the network visibility tab, you have to activate the functionality. You have also here the flow monitor that we will see after. It allows you to see in real time what is going on in your network, who is using what kind of application, and what are the IP addresses of those applications, and what is the bandwidth. So you have then to go to the other tab. The other tab is the application control rule tab. So you can create a new rule. Okay. So this is what will appear. So you put the name of the rule, the position, and then you put the action. It can be blocked or allowed. And then you can control by two different types, by applications or by using a dynamic filter. So when we talk about application, it's fairly easy. You just select, if you click here in this little folder tab, you will have a list of all the applications. The applications are arranged in categories that you can see here. Those are all the categories, and inside of categories, you've got applications. And here you will select your applications that should be blocked or allowed, and for which network or host this rule should apply to. Now, when we talk about dynamic filter, so then suddenly the applications will be rated by productivity and risk with a scale of 1 to 5. And for example, you can choose to block applications that are low in productivity and high in risk, because those are bad applications, for example. So this is how you configure. You can see here that you've got you don't have control these applications, but you have control these categories. And then you can choose what kind of categories you are talking about. It can be the category remote access, the category collaboration, and then you can play with the productivity and risk value. So I will not talk about the application functionality, because it's very easy. You just put your applications inside. I'm just going to talk about the dynamic filter. So here, as you can see, you've got different categories. You can choose one or more or all. And you will see here all the applications for this or those categories. And you can see here that the category RDP, for example, has a risk of 5 and a productivity of 4. Okay, so this is just how the Sophos decided to put the value. And then, for example, if I select the remote access category, or all the categories, it's as you want. I'm going to choose the productivity that is less or equal than 5, and that the risk is equal to 1 or bigger. Okay, so it will block all those applications that are inside this inside those ratings. Okay, so it can be a lot of applications. Then you can play, of course, in the productivity and risk. So it will take all those applications into consideration in the rule to allow or block depending on your strategy. Now, in terms of application visibility, so you've got the real-time view with Flow Monitor. So when you open the Flow Monitor, you will see the application involved, how many clients inside your network is using this application, what is the bandwidth usage now, and what is the total traffic. You can choose then to suddenly block, shape, or throttle the traffic. Now, if I click on YouTube, I'm to see here all the IP address on which I'm connected to and on which port and bandwidth usage and total traffic. And if I click on the client here, it will give me here it's my computer who went actually to YouTube. So you see, this is very practical to detect what's going on your network. You also have the real-time logs in Sophos. Before it was more the visibility, and this is the log. So this is a real-time log of what is going on in terms of detected application on my network. You can see that, for example, I'm blocking SNMP, and there are other services for my network that is allowed, that I'm allowing. Now you also have, you can see for a period of time, you can see, for example, the top sources that communicate with applications, the top destinations, the top application, etc. And in this example, I've chosen to see what applications my NAS accessed for the last 7 days. And I see that it used all those applications. So this is very practical if I need to make some adjustment or to maybe investigate something. Then we've got also one of the last places you have in the logs, you can search inside the log files, also over a period of time. So you can choose a term. So it's not only an IP address, but you can choose other things like a port, for example, or the number of the rule. And you can see for this period of time, for this time frame, all the applications that got used for my NAS for this period of time. So as you can see, it's very practical. Of course, once again, it's not a bulletproof security because application control has also its own limitations, its own bugs and problems, but it can help you in certain situations to have a better visibility and a better control. And this will apply to any kind of traffic that is not going through the proxy. So it is a very important, add-in in terms of security and how we can, help to protect your NAS. So that's it. I hope this video has been informative for you and see you next time for another one. Bye-bye.